This episode is brought to you by United Airlines. What's new with United? Well, 2 new planes a week, that's what. But what does that mean? It means new and redesigned planes with things like larger overhead bins with room for everyone's roller bag, power outlets at every seat, screens at every seat, and the ability to connect your Bluetooth headphones to those screens. Plan your trip today at united.com or on their award-winning app. This amount is an estimated average of current aircraft delivery schedules. Final delivery schedule subject to change.
It's a common sense recap of the big stories. It's Cats and Cosby on 77 WABC.
Let's bring in Dr. William Parker, naval officer. Of course, he was the former head of the East-West Institute. He also is the CEO of Parker Maritime Technologies. Dr. Parker, this is really explosive. First of all, what's your reaction to France basically throwing the U.S. under the bus?
Well, I think, France, like many other countries, are starting to question the strength and the commitment of the United States. But that said, France has lost its mind. Macron has bought into the idea that China will somehow be kind to France, like so many other countries bought into it during the Belt and Road Initiative. France believes that they are a great power, and as such, they believe in this whole Thucydides trap, and that they are the great power. They're not.
Didn't France believe that? Didn't France believe that in 1939?
They did, as a matter of fact. It didn't work out well for them then until the United States came in and bailed them out. That's a true statement.
Yeah, and I went to Normandy. I feel like saying, spending the time there, you think about all the allegiances, all the things America's done. And now Macron goes over to China for 3 days and he comes back and says, yeah, China's my buddy. I mean, you brought up a great point, Dr. Parker, because it's like the U.S. is being squeezed out under this president.
Yeah, we are being squeezed out from a lot of different countries. Saudi Arabia recently and others. Saudi Arabia building a conversation and a relationship with Iran, oil issues. At the end of the day, this is really all about really 4 things with Taiwan and China as a whole. It's geostrategic, 170 miles closer to the Philippines and Guam if they get Taiwan, major manufacturer of chips, et cetera, that are high tech for U.S. companies, that they are the 4th or 5th largest trading partner with China. And most importantly, China and Russia are trying all they can to displace the U.S. dollar as the world reserve currency. If that happens, this will impact the U.S. with higher interest rates on loans to the country and individuals. It'll be more difficult to get loans, and it will significantly impact our economy.
It's really scary, Dr. Parker. Did you see this? They were, after exercises, China said, it just came out a little bit ago, they did attack simulations, including with nuclear strike bombers in the sky. They are not fooling around. This is really, really heightening.
Well, it is really heightening, and I think they're looking at this as Russia did with Ukraine and saying, is this our one and only opportunity? Do we have a weakness in the United States right now in its leadership, and we're going to go after it? I think it would be a huge mistake for them because I think that the landing into Taiwan is going to be more significant than they think. The Taiwanese are ready to fight. I think there are others that will fight alongside them. I hope the United States looks at our geostrategic efforts and realizes how important this is to us as well.
Well, I didn't realize, Tony Carbonetti, I didn't realize that NATO countries can pick and choose which skirmishes they get into with fellow NATO countries. I thought you had to have the back of all NATO countries. But you'd mentioned the Belt and Road Initiative, and maybe the French should check with some of those African countries and see if they would still do those deals today, knowing what they know now.
Tony, you're absolutely right on that. The Belt and Road Initiative, many of those countries are like, holy cow, look what happened. The Chinese brought in a whole bunch of their own people.
Yep.
Right, exactly. They didn't sign up for this at all. But at the end of the day, when you're talking NATO allies, you do have Article 5 requirements. But with Taiwan in particular, it has significant impact on the United States. And I think most people say it's just some little country. Why do we care about this? Well, we care for those reasons I just mentioned. It will have a major impact on the United States, and it will also show weakness, and it will say, okay, you left Afghanistan with your head tucked between your tail or between your legs. You're not looking super strong in Ukraine, which you could have prevented it in the first place, and now here you are with Taiwan. If we let this one happen, I think the rest of the world will see this and say, okay, they are no longer the superpower that they once were, the United States.
You know, I want to ask you, Dr. Parker, Lindsey Graham was on one of the Sunday shows, and he basically said that maybe we should be using U.S. troops there on the ground and get them in soon. Secretary of State Pompeo, the former Secretary of State, who we've had many times here on the show, basically said, quote, all options should be on the table. He wouldn't specifically say troops, but he didn't rule it out. What do you think? I mean, this is getting very heated.
I think that Secretary Pompeo, who is both Central Intelligence and State Department, gets it that all options are on the table, which is the approach that President Trump took to North Korea when this whole thing started with the conversations back and forth there. And quite frankly, President Clinton used to say that too. All options are on the table. When we start taking options off the table too early, it's a mistake. To commit troops right now, I don't know that doesn't spin things up more than we want to. I mean, nobody wants another war. We don't need it financially. We don't need our people over there. But on the other side, we have to make sure that we're able to defend our friends and allies when it's within the interest of the United States, and this certainly is.
Right. Well, Dr. Parker, I got to say, this is Rudy Washington. All this talk of war really makes me nervous when you have this disaster in Afghanistan with $80 billion worth of weaponry left behind and 13 soldiers that were killed unnecessarily, and the whole evacuation process, and nobody gets fired. Nobody. I can't imagine how you don't empty out that Pentagon and go with a whole new staff or the Secretary of Defense. Nobody. I'm not excited about this at all, and I'm not in favor of putting troops in with this bunch in charge.
Well, I will tell you that every time you hear a Secretary of Defense or Secretary of the Navy or any of the senior leadership talk, the first words out of their mouth should be to fight and win America's wars. And if they're talking about anything else, I don't care if it's climate change or diversity or anything else, all important issues. But the number one thing that should be coming out of their mouth, because their mandate by Congress and by the Constitution is to fight and win America's wars.
So where did this pronoun discussion come from then?
Mars.
Fight, yeah, well, fight and win America's wars is what we have a military for. And the reason that we're having trouble right now recruiting people is because America's sons and daughters' parents are looking at this and saying, you can go do a lot of things, but you're not going to do this. You're not going to be a police officer because they're not defended. They're not protected by the very people that should protect them in government right now.
And Judge Weinberg, you have a real quick question.
Dr. Parker, what did you think of Admiral Kirby's statement last week saying what a great job they did? And he was proud of the evacuation in Afghanistan.
Yeah, I did see that. And I also saw the Secretary of Defense's statements about that. Look, I think there are a lot of people that did do a good job in getting people out. But the reality is there was a plan in place, and that plan in place left Bagram there till the end so that you could move stuff to Bagram, get the $80 billion of equipment out that we needed to, get all the people out, not only Americans, but our allies and our close workers over there for 20 years, get them out at the right time. If we were going to leave, there was a right way to do it. The way we did it was not the right way in any way, shape, or form. I completely disagree with that statement that they did a good job.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Bill Parker, and we have ourselves in a mess, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
I look forward to it. Thank you for having me on.